what I want to do for this example is create a small Windows-based application that takes employee information such as first name and last name and enters it into a hash table. So, because this is a Windows-based app, this time what we're going to do is we're going to use this one, Windows Forms app, and then just call this junk code. I probably have more junk code. Alright. And there we are. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is create my object, meaning I'm not going to add a string to the hash table. What I want to do is add an object to the hash table, which an object consists of two items, an employee's first name and an employee's last name. So the first thing would be to create the actual class. So I'm going to go here and simply create the class and call it employees, as you see here. And this class is going to have two private variables, both of type string. One is called first name and the other one is called last name. And I'm going to have two constructors. The first one is going to be a null constructor, an empty constructor. And so I want to instantiate both to empty string, both private members, private variables, sorry. And then I want a different constructor where users of my class will actually pass on information. And so I can load the information using the items that were passed. And there I go. And then properties for both of these. To save some time, I'm just going to copy and paste the properties that I already have written, because these are things that we already saw. So I'm just writing, I just copy and pasted a read-write property for last name and first name. And I do want to override the toString function so that I can define how this is going to print. And all I want to do is just return first name with a space and then last name. And so this will constitute my class for employees, which is what the object that I'm going to be adding to the hash table that I'll write in a second. And so before we do anything, what I want to do here is set up my GUI, my graphical user interface. So I want this to be center screen, and maybe just put employee hash example, and so forth. And now create the actual design. To save some time on the design, I'm just going to copy and paste the creation of this stuff. And I'll explain what I did. Basically what I created were a bunch of buttons, text boxes, and label buttons. So I created a label called first name with a text box, another one called last name with a text box, and I added all these buttons that are going to do something very specific. If you need to know how to add buttons and all that, you just click on Toolbox, all Windows Forms, and then you'll have button here, for example, label here, and text box here. So for example, if I wanted to create a new label, I would click on this and then just draw it out, and I can move this, resize it, etc. So basically, this is what I want to do. When I click on Add to Hash, I want to add whatever this information is to the employees class, and then add that object to the hash. Retrieve from hash pretty much is like it's a find. Then remove an item from a hash, see if it's empty, see if it contains a particular key, clear the hash table, list all employees, and list all keys. So those are the elements that I want to do. And so the first code that I want to do is add to hash. And now to add to hash, I'm going to need the actual hash table. So I'm going to create a variable called hash table. And if you notice, you won't see hash table here. That's because it's under the Windows, the system.collections namespace. So I have to add that. And now, I guess it's not under that one. It should be under, let me check what it is. Actually, no, it's because I misspelled this. It's hash table with a, there we go. Alright, so it is under the collections namespace, and we'll call this simply table. And therefore, this variable is visible throughout the entirety of this class, which is the form. So to add to a hash table, what I'm going to do is first create something called a try catch. I've explained this in a few classes, and it's basically just to make sure that exceptions, errors, are taken care of. And so if an error occurs, all I want to do is just show the error, which is something that's contained in ex.message, and maybe update the status. Now status is this label that I created here, which shows the status of whatever action we took. And so the status will simply be that error, and then show the error so that it's visible also. So one displays a message box and then also displays the error status. And now we can try. So if txt first name, which is this text box, so whatever's entered here or whatever's entered here into last name. So if this text box dot text is equal to null, empty string, meaning nothing was entered, or nothing was entered for last name, this is double. So if nothing was entered for last name, then I want to throw an exception. This means generate an error. Throw a new exception, and we'll call it no data entered. There we go. Otherwise, if something was entered in these two fields, then it'll continue. And so what I can do is I can create an instance of my employee class, and pass it the two parameters that it's expecting, which is first name and last name. Well, I know this because one is in first name.text. First name.text. And the other one is in last name.text. And there we are. And so this will create the instance. It'll call this constructor and load that data into that. And so now I can do table.add and call it emp.toString. And this will pretty much, the first thing it's asking is for a key. Now if I want to enter the last name as a key, then what I could do is I can actually put emp dot. If I want to add the last name as a key, then I would do the last name, and then it's asking for the object. The key is the way that it's going to retrieve. That's going to be, the hashing algorithm is going to use that to create the hash code, whatever the key is. And then the object that I want to save, well, I want to save the entire employee. So I would do this. Now I could also generate a specific hash code, which is .toString, and every toString function, every string has a way to obtain a hash code. And it's just by calling a function called getHashCode. And so I could do that as well. And that's a very specific hash code. And I can update the status. So emp.toString, which would return the entire name, has been added. And there we are. And then what I would want to do is clear the fields, meaning whatever the user entered, reset it back to empty string. But I want to be able to call this multiple times, so I don't want to just write the code here. So what I want to do is maybe write private void clear fields, and here set first name equal to empty string, and last name equal to empty string. There we go. And now all I have to do here is just clear fields. And that would add to hash. I can also retrieve from hash. And to retrieve from hash, I'm going to double click on this to create the event handler for it. And now simply write the code for it. And so because my key is either the last name or the hash or whatever it is that I want to use, then I could do the same thing though, try catch, and that's just to anticipate errors. So I'll always start with this. And I can say if txt last name dot text is an empty string, then there's an error, meaning in order for me to retrieve it, I need a last name, I need a key. So I'll say throw new exception, no last name entered, or whatever error I want. Otherwise, I'm going to need an object, and we'll call this the result, and it's going to look for a table based on my object key. Now, if the object key has to be whatever it is that I entered here in the add. As you can see, I'm using this as the hash code. And so I can just copy that and paste it here. But it wouldn't be employee. If I did this, I would actually have to retrieve the actual employee. What I could also do is use a simpler method, which is just the last name as the key here. And also retrieve it. I'm sorry, it's not. It's txt last name dot text. There we go. And retrieve that. And so what this will do is to say, hey, I have a key here called last name, whatever was entered here. Look for it in the table and then get the resulting object. This will return the actual hash. Put it into an object. All right. And so now if my result is not equal to null, meaning something was actually returned, then I could say, well, status.text equals result, and then result.toString. Remember that toString function we wrote? Well, that's why it's important now. Otherwise, it just means that nothing was found, meaning whatever was entered was not found. So txt last name dot text is not part of the hash table. And there I am. And that would basically be the code to retrieve from hash. I could also remove from hash, and the remove from hash would be, again, try catch. Because this is a Windows program, I want to make sure that the user doesn't do anything that would cause exceptions or errors. So just message show whatever error occurred, warn the user, and then let's try this. So if I'm trying to remove something from the hash table, so I need to make sure that something is passed. Since I'm using last name as a key, I want to test that to make sure it's not empty, and if it is, throw an error. Please enter last name. And now I can call the remove function from my hash table, which simply asks for the object key. Well, what's the object key? The last name. And there we are. Then maybe update the status. And I can say last name.text was removed. I can also ask if it was empty. if the hash table is empty. So for example, I can click on this and say, well, is the table empty? And to do that, pretty simple. I can say LBL status.text equals the table is currently, and this is just a placeholder, so it'll display this before anything. And then I can say if table.count is equal to 0, then what I want you to do is concatenate empty to it. So I can say LBL status.text plus equals empty. And that just concatenates empty to this that was passed before it. Sorry, plus equals. Otherwise, it means that something is there, so I can say LBL status.text plus equals not empty. And there we go. I can also look to see if the hash table contains a particular key. So, once again, try catch. And once again, I'm testing for a key that was entered. So if it's equal to empty, obviously we know we need to throw these errors. Not empty if it was a null string. Nothing was entered. And now we can say LBL status.text equal contains keys and throw the test at it, which would be table.contains keys, and it's an actual function that's asking for the key. Well, the key is the last name, so once again I can just do that, and there we go. That's pretty much it for that function. We can also create a function that clears the contents of the hash table, and to do that, very simple. All I need to do is call table.clear, and that would do it. And now maybe update the status to hash table has been cleared. And we can also list all of the employees. Now, employees is an object. And so we need to understand that, because the hash table contains a bunch of these objects. Okay, to do this, we're going to need to use something called iDictionary enumerator. Basically, this is part of the hash table class. Table, which is a hash table, will contain an enumerator, so I can get the enumerator to build the iteration, meaning to iterate through every element that the hash table contains. And so I'm going to do something called iDictionary enumerator. Call it enumerator, or enum for short, equals table.getEnumerator. So this gets the enumerator, and oops, I can't name it enum. I can name it like that. There we go. Enum. The actual enum is a name that's specific to C#, so I can't use it. Okay, so this will get the enumerator, pass it to this variable that I just declared, and I'm going to need something called string builder, and we'll call this buffer. And string builder is just a way to build a string. New string builder. And what I want to do now is while enum.moveNext. So basically, this is going to say, well, while there are more items, this is going to return true or false, meaning if I can move next. And again, all this does is it iterates through every single entry. I can do something called buffer.append and enum.value plus /r/n, which is the same thing as writing environment.newline. It's all it is just a carriage return line feed. And then I can say txt container.text equals buffer.toString. Alright. And I can do the exact same thing for list all keys. It's really the same code. So here I'm looking for the value. And now in this one, I'm looking for the key. And the rest of the code is pretty simple. And so now I can run this. And let's enter one person, which is me. Oops, let's see what error is occurring. Probably forgot something very simple. Alright, let's stop the code. Ah yes, I never instantiated table, hash table. So what I can do here is just say table equals new hash table. And that creates an instance of that object. So now I can use it in code. Alright, so let's go ahead and continue. So there's one item and you can see it has been added. And then maybe another item. And there we are. And then another item. And I can see, okay, let's see, does Marulanda exist? So I can hit retrieve. And there it is, result equals Marulanda. I can remove that so Marulanda was removed. I can ask if it's empty, and it's not empty. Obviously it has the other two. I can say list all employees, and these are the employees that are left, or list all keys. Since the keys are last names, there they are. So this is an example of a hash table. For your assignment, you need to use linked list and this. You may want to take a look at the live chat. I know I had some issues with the live chat in terms of size, but if you just listen to the last portion, it'll give you a couple of pointers. Also, there's another video that I have called linked list, and it's basically how to create a linked list and use a linked list. So between a linked list and this assignment that I'm showing you here, this code that I'm showing you here, you should be able to pull up enough to create the assignment number 5. Once again, thank you guys for listening, and have a great day.